options. It doesn't give you that big picture, that simplify. Let's see, under setup. Oh, not setup, settings. So that one is simplify. Let's see. Under worksheets, that's what's allowing me to go ahead and put things on the worksheet itself. So if you don't want to see the thread changes at all, you can uncheck that. You can have it go ahead and put the thread count. You can put the cost. So all of these things can be changed. So it's going to be in that settings that you could go in and change that. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions in regards to anything we've done so far? Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. As far as will it show the layers when you print? So, I mean, it's all in what you turn on or off. So when you're printing your design, so like I said, in your print preview, right now I have it to print actual size. Again, if I went fit to page, if it needed to, it would shrink it to fit the page. I mean, here's the layers. So it tells me it shows red, and then it goes to the dusty rose, then it goes to the Aztec gold. So right now I have that so that it's going ahead and putting all of these here. So it's all in what you turn on or off in your printout, what comes up here. That's actually the default. So what you just saw a minute ago is the default. Does anyone have any questions before we jump into anything new? Okay, so we are going to jump into things that curve. So in getting into things that curve, I'm going to start a new file. Just as a reminder, if you want to use your recipes, you can go into your new design wizard. You can select what you want to use. Click on finish. And it's going to go ahead and put those changes to the settings there for you. So the first way that we're going to make something curve is to use our arc baseline. So again, I'm going to come over here. Again, click and hold to get these flyouts. So I'm going to go to my arc tool. This one is a box baseline, so I'm going to left click and let go. Move my cursor so I have a line. Left click and let go. Again, the minute I let go after I draw that line, I get this rubber banding arc. It's a lot easier to deal with this when you bring your cursor to the center. For those of you who are mathematically inclined and know what radius it should be, it does tell you that. Otherwise, if you're doing anything like I am, it's more of a visual. So you're like, is that too curvy or is that too straight? So however it is that you're getting your radius, go ahead and set that by left clicking. If I'm doing an upper arc, I'm going to pull up to get the height of my text. So you can again see it's drawing the box for you. Then I'm going to type. So once you have something on the screen, what you're going to notice with your arc is that you have these big white squares that show up. Those are your arc adjustment squares. So see how it's allowing you to come in here and click and drag to adjust the depth of your arc. So the two in the center are allowing you to do this proportionally. The ones off here to the side are disproportional. So yes, you can pull and make that a little flatter. So let's go ahead, we'll do a lower arc just to kind of review this. So I'm going to click on my arc tool, left click and let go, move my cursor so I have a line, left click and let go. I'm going to move my cursor to the center and also pull down to get my radius, pull down to get my height, and then type. Now, honestly, if you want two arcs, don't try and match them. So if you want two arcs that are going to match each other, that's what our circle tool is for. So if you select circle, you can left click, hold, and drag, and you've got a circle with a line coming out of it. That line is going to be the center of the arc that is on top of your circle. So I'm going to let go, pull out. So that's going to give me the height of my text. And then I can type. So you can see in this case, it does allow you to change the upper or the lower baseline just by clicking in that particular section over here in properties. Now, the whole thing about this, though, is if you change anything about this, so let's say I come in here and I change my font, see how it changes both of them because they are actually connected together. So if you wanted to be able to change them individually, you can take a circle and break it into two sections. So if I scroll down here, you're going to see there's what's called a base curve type. So I can click over here on the base curve type and there's an arrow. So if I select arc, it's going to take that and break this into two individual pieces. Sometimes people do that because they want to put a different font in there. Sometimes you want to change a setting, like you want different spacing for the upper and the lower baseline. It's whatever you want to do, but it's allowing you to break that in two. So if you really wanted to, yes, you can make this a totally different font. So if you want to come in here and make this a different font, you can make it a different font. Now, the other thing that you can do is if you came in here and you've decided, or the customer decided, that instead of two arcs, you want an arc and a straight line. Again, you can still go with that base curve type, change the arc to a straight line. Now, the next way that we can make something curve is to use what we call our envelopes. So an envelope is always going to start with a straight line. So let's say I come over here and I left click to start this. I'm going to move my cursor so I have a straight line. Hit my enter key. So here's my word envelope that I just put up here. Now let's go ahead and look at one of those other shortcuts. So I have the word envelope in a box. If I hit 4 on my keyboard, it's going to blow up whatever is in the box. So that's fit selection to window. So once I have the word envelope zoomed in here, you're going to see that envelope is one of my options over here. So I can click over here and click on the down arrow. So I can make it curved at the top, flat on the bottom. So whatever shape I want this to be, I can select that envelope. Now, if you need to make adjustments to how curvy this is, what you're going to find is that underneath your vertex select tool over here, if I hold that down, you're going to get a flyout, and edit envelope is one of the options here. So once you go into edit envelope, you'll be able to take these and move and reshape the baseline here. Now, if you want to see what this looks like generated, you can hit G for generate, and it's going to regenerate. Now, the key is once you're done with this, so if you're done moving all these points, you're going to want to go back to what we call our select mode, which is our normal mode while we're working. So you can either click on the arrow right here, or it's the letter S on your keyboard. So that is our envelope. Now we can also actually use our text baseline and our vertical text baseline as a curve. So I can take my text baseline, and let's say that I want these to be 0.75. I can type in 0.75. Now, if you don't see that little curve next to your cursor like I have, you're going to hit the letter Q for quick draw. So once you are in the quick draw mode, when you left click on your screen, you're going to get a straight point. When you right click, you're going to get a curve. So I can left click to start this, move my cursor up and right click, move my cursor down and right click, move my cursor up and left click. I can hit the enter key and start typing. Again, if it's going to exceed that line that you drew, you could always come in here and use your shrink to fit. Again, you can always adjust this so it's going to use the height that you want. You can still come in and add spacing. And you would still be free to move these individually. So you can do that with your text baseline, and you can also do that with your vertical baseline. So again, here's vertical. I can come in here and put in my height that I want to use. Again, if you don't see that curve next to your cursor, you're going to go ahead and click on the letter Q for quick draw. Left click to start this. Right click, left click, then you can type. Does anyone have any questions? As far as changing the curve, again, when you have it selected, again, you can come over here to what we call vertex select, and you can move the curve. So again, it really just depends on what you're doing. So see, you've got the different lines on that. So you can make it curvy, not so curvy. So yes, you can. Always remember, once you do that, go back to your select arrow. Does anyone have any other questions on things that curve? As far as getting that to fill the whole curve over here, I just went ahead and used my shrink to fit. So I changed that to with compression. All right, if we don't have any questions on that, let's see. Oh, shrink to fit. Again, shrink to fit is only going to change if it doesn't fit on the line to start. So it's only if it goes beyond the line. So that would be the only way that shrink to fit would work. If you wanted to fill the curve and, okay, so if you wanted to fill the curve, then what you're going to do, you have the other option is you have, like we talked about here, instead of using shrink to fit, you can always go fill the box over here, and that would force it to fit in that area. Or you have fill the baseline. So let's say I had this at 0.75 and you want to force it, it's going to force it to fit. Or if you had the opposite, you had 0.35, it's going to stretch it to fit. So you can use fill box. Does anyone have any other questions? All right. So we are actually going to get into our monograms next. So let's say we are going to do a monogram for a towel. Again, remember, we can go into our design wizard and we can select our towel. That's going to put all our settings that we need. So once we have our new screen, now if you are going to use our 3-letter monogram fonts, so again, Monogram 1, Monogram 2, circle monogram. Those are the 3 that come with your standard font collection. Those all need to be used under the 3-letter monogram baseline. That is actually going to be what we call a box baseline. So it expects you to draw the box. So let's say I come over here and select my Monogram 1, which is actually going to be under your old fonts. So you have to go to old embroidery fonts. Click on the arrow, scroll down to our Monogram 1. So we're going to draw the box. So just remember, when you are drawing a box for a monogram, the height is the height of the letter that will be in the center. Usually when you put those letters in, it's going to be your first initial, your last initial, and your middle initial in that order. Now with the Monogram baseline, it does not have center beads or kerning beads. So if you want to change the spacing, you're going to have to come over here and either change your letter spacing. So I put a -1 to bring those together. If you want to change it individually, you can also use your kerning arrow. So that's going to allow you just to move the individual letters. If any of this confuses you at this point because there are no center beads or anything like that, you can always turn your beads off. So you can definitely turn any of these on or off. Just remember to turn it back on if you need it for something else that you're doing. So as far as the decorations go, it really depends on the font. So not every font has decorations, but you will be able to see that in your font help. So if I go to help and fonts, again, I can obviously go to Monogram fonts over here if I wanted to and pick Monogram 1. I could also search for it. So you can see here that it is indicating that this has decorations available, and make sure that when you're selecting it, that you're selecting it for the type of letters you've put up. So if you've put up 3 letters, only use the decorations that say 3 letters. If it says 2 letters, make sure you only put 2 letters. So once I've decided, so let's say I want to go ahead and use the one that is the asterisk over here. I can come over here to where it says decorations. I can put the asterisk in here, hit enter, and it's going to put that around my design. Again, only the Monogram fonts that contain digitized decorations are going to be able to have that particular field active. Right, so whichever one you put in, so if you put in a different one, it's going to put those on here. Now, if you exceed, so remember we talked about before in the font helps, let's kind of grab that page again. So we have the maximum size for the recommended height is 4 inches. So on this page, it is giving me all of the decorations. So you're going to go into your font help. So once you have, again, this isn't, you can't click on it or anything. It's just literally a visual. So you just have to remember which piece of punctuation you want to use. The other thing here is our maximum height is 4 inches. So we're going to use that in a minute. So I went in here under decorations and I typed in this case, to get these little brackets over here, I typed in that little square bracket. Now, if I exceed 4 inches in height, so let's say I put in 6 inches. So I'm now exceeding the maximum height. So what I'm going to need to do here, because right now it is doing a satin, I would need to change that from a satin to a fill stitch. So I can come over here to my satin tab, Then I can come in here under the Satin tab and select anything that does not mention the word satin. When you do that, you'll see that in 3D view here. See how that's doing a fill instead of a satin? So if you are exceeding the maximum height as a satin stitch, then you're going to want to change that satin to a fill pattern. Does anyone have any questions on that? In editing, you'll be able to do different things with that. So in your editing class, we'll get more into taking that apart, but as a general rule, this is all one piece. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. So the second way that we can do a monogram is we can actually go in and start a new file. So let's say we go File, New from the top. We get that new document window to come up, and we select Monogram over here under your specialty projects. So once you do that, you're going to see that, first of all, coming down the side here, you have the different setups. You also have what they call frames and decorations. So I'm going to actually turn them both off for the moment. So now I can scroll down and I can select a setup. So let's say this is what I want. Then I'm going to start typing in my letters. You can change your font. You could change your height if you want. Then you're going to click on Apply, and it's going to make those changes for you. Now, if you want to add a frame, you can click on where it says Frame, and it's going to bring the frame up. And then you want to literally click on the frame on your screen, and it's going to open up this drop down off here to the side and allow you to pick from the frames that are stored. So once you're ready to sew, you can click on OK. It's going to bring this up and you're ready to go ahead and sew that out. Yes, we can do that again. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take these out of here. Let's close this. So we started off, we went to File, New, and again, we need to get that new document window up. We're going to click on Monogram from the specialty projects. So let's go ahead. We'll do some with what they call your decoration. So I'm going to uncheck frames. So I could even scroll down here and just do one line of text if I want. So I can come in here and type whatever I want. I can pick a font. Again, I can click on Apply. Now these X's are really placeholders. So that's going to tell you where it's going to place the decoration. So let's say I pick the one that's still right below my name. Once I do that, it's going to open up this field off here to the side, and then I can select whatever decoration that I want to put there. So wherever you click, that's where it's going to place the decoration. Again, once you're ready, you can click on OK. And those X's are never going to show. So even though you saw those extra X's on my screen, they are not going to show. So just another quick way that you can easily put together, whether it be a couple lines of text, a monogram, just one letter, and then you can either put it with a frame, don't put it with a frame, put some designs with it. But again, a real quick little template that you can use to set these up. Does anyone have any questions on that? Yes, you can still go back. If I close this, this is still open. So if you went back here and you hit none, it's going to get rid of that one. So if you go back here and you just hit none, it's going to get rid of those. So now it's just going to show that one that's off here in the corner. You can always come down here and pick a different one. As far as if there's a way to view all the decorations, you can. I mean, if you go into the folder, so those are actually under the decorations folder. So you can actually go in there and view all of them at one time. So yes, like where your fonts and things are stored actually in the DG program. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes, you can save things as templates or open them. So over here, you can do that. So if you saved it as a template, then later on, you can open it up. And I haven't saved any, so let's just save this one. So save a template, give it a name. So now if I close this, I come back in here, go to a new file, go to Monogram. I can go to Open Template, click on here. It's going to open that one up. I can either use it as it sits, or again, if I'm ready to go, I just click on OK. So obviously anything in there, I could change the name, I could change the decorations. It's just that setup is what it's saving. So now that we've done those, let's go ahead and talk about our TrueType fonts. Because everything we've done up till now has been embroidery fonts. So we're going to start another new file. So as far as your TrueType fonts, I have no control over the TrueType fonts that are in your computer. Again, those are your computer's fonts. So literally, whatever operating system you have, other programs, whether it be an accounting program, an art program, it could even be a greeting card program that you make cards for people. If they have TrueType fonts in them, they are going to come up under the TrueType font selection. So let's say I come back over here to my text baseline. So under the font type, if I go ahead and pick TrueTypes, Whatever TrueType fonts are in your system are going to come up here. So if they're in here, they are going to come up. So I'm going to left click and let go. I'm going to draw my line. Left click at the end of the line. Hit the enter key. We're going to click on OK. So the first thing you have to realize is that your TrueType fonts default to a complex fill. So that is the first thing. In doing so, not only do they come up as a complex fill that you can obviously change the pattern to. So I can come here to the complex fill tab and I can change this to whatever pattern I want here. I can also add a border. So I'm going to actually copy a couple of these. So let's go to our duplicate tool. Left click on duplicate. Left click to place it. So I'm going to place 4 more. Hit my enter key. So you're going to notice as you scroll down, it says TTF border, and right now it says none. So if I come over here and I hit steel, it's going to put the same color border as the inside fill. If I come over here and I hit steel only, it's going to put a border with no fill. If I scroll down and I hit color steel, it is going to put a second color border. And if I come in here and I change this to a run only, now I have a running stitch with no fill. So again, you can easily come in here and add that border. So when you're doing TrueType fonts as a complex fill, usually there's not going to be any need to do any major editing. Now, usually when you see an issue with a font, again, auto digitize is part of the issue that you're going to see here. Sometimes auto digitize does a really good job. Sometimes it doesn't. It does a really good job on complex fills. Now, when it has to come in and do some of your satin paths, you may have to go in and do some editing to them. So let's come in here. I'm going to actually duplicate this again. Put this over here. I'm going to actually change this so it says the word satin. Then to change it to an actual satin path, I'm going to scroll down to where this says TTF border. And instead of it being a complex fill, I'm going to select satin path. So you can already see it's kind of funky the way it did this T, the way it's done the A, the I, the stitches are kind of weird over here. So in this case, it's definitely something we are going to need to edit. Now, are all fonts something you need to edit? Again, it depends on the font. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to change this to a different font. This one I could sew with no problem. So I wouldn't have to make any changes to this one. So it really depends on the font whether or not you're going to need to edit it. So we are definitely going to save this so that we can use it to edit in our editing class, which is in our Embroidery Essentials Part 2. So the most important file that you are going to save is going to be your PXF file. So when we go to Files, Save As, you have to save your PXF. If you don't save your PXF file, you won't be able to edit this when you need to. It's not going to know that we did a particular TrueType font. It's not going to know what stitch pattern we selected. So again, these are the file formats that we need to save in order to be able to edit. So I'm just going to call this TrueType. Now, as far as saving it as a DST file, if you were ready to sew and you physically had to walk your file to your machine, you could save it. So if this was actually ready to sew, I could go File, Save As again. Change my files of type to either a DST or a TBF. Again, our new machines read our TBF file. So then I can tell it where I want to save it. So I can save it to my flash drive. And this would be ready to go to my machine. But again, you're not going to want to really go ahead and save it until you've made that correction. But again, you would save it that second time if you were ready to sew it out. So again, as far as where we got the TTF border, the TTF border, so again, once I have this switched to a TrueType, so first of all, the font type is where I found that. So when I have something up on my screen, you're going to see font type, and in the drop down, you should have TrueType, and again, remember we turned on our old fonts. So I have 3 categories: TrueType, new embroidery, old embroidery. So in this case, I selected TrueType. Once you have selected your TrueType, you're going to notice as you scroll down, if this is a complex fill, then the border is active. Okay? So only if the complex fill is, the fill type is that border going to be active, then you can hit that and get the drop down. So again, you should at least have the 2. If you don't have your old fonts turned on, you wouldn't have 3 categories, but you should at least have the 2. This one is Cooper Black. This one over here, that work, is Comic Sans. And again, whether or not you have these, I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty standard font. So I would think that either one of these you should have, but again, I don't know what you have loaded in your computer. Does anyone have any questions on that one? Right, we are definitely going to edit this, so we save that, or I save mine, to use in our Embroidery Essentials Part 2. So that's when we're going to edit this. Now, as far as putting borders around a regular embroidery font, There are 7 what we call standard artwork fonts that come with your software. So any one of these, and again, that sample is in your materials section, any one of these can have a border applied to it. So for instance, if I select the word evening news, you're going to see that because that is what we call an artwork font, that the border and fill option here is activated. So I can come in here and select something. So I have steel with a satin. I'm doing what we call a manual color change. So once I do the manual color change down here, I could tell it what border color to be. So if I want that to be green, I can select 6 for the border. So right now, it is actually coming in here and it's doing the borders last. You can come in here and say borders first. So however it is that you want this to work, you can change those settings. But again, it is only going to be these particular fonts that have that capability. So you do have this particular, in your material section, this PXF file is there. So you can sew that out so that your customers can see which one of your embroidery fonts have the capability of being multiple colors. The only other ones, yes, if you have one that's literally called 2-color block, then yes, it's 2 colors. But as far as a regular font that has the capability of being bordered, it's got to be one of these 7. Okay? So what we're going to start now is looking at your homework assignments. So our first homework assignment, it's going to be for a t-shirt. So when we say File New, I can go to my wizard and I can select t-shirt from the drop-down. Now, when you go ahead and bring the design to the screen, again, one of the other things that your PXF file saves is the colors. So the other exercise that we change the color palette, if you've done that and you save the PXF file, it's going to save the color palette with it. So I'm going to actually merge in my design. So here's my merge design. It's asking me where my design is. So mine is on an external hard drive. Yours is going to be wherever you stored it. So I'm going to go get my giraffe design. So these are in your materials section. So make sure that you do load it. So these are both going to be PXF files that we gave you to use. So I'm going to click on Open, left click to place it. And like we just said, it's going to bring up the palette that was saved with my design. So if you want to add a color to use for your lettering, you can come over here and go to Thread Chart, pick a color. It's going to add that at the bottom. Now, the other thing is when it brings in a design, since everyone here, whether you have Composer, Illustrator, Extreme, Maestro, everybody has the capability of editing individual segments of a design. So when you bring in a design, it comes in ungrouped. Now, that's great if you want to edit the design. But if all you want to do is move it somewhere on your screen, if you didn't make sure that you actually went in and grouped it or had a box around the whole thing and you moved it, right now I just moved that one section. So I can come up here and undo this. So to group something, I'm going to click and drag a box around it. I can come up here to segment and select group. You can always ungroup something later on. So if you want to ungroup it and edit an individual piece of it, that's fine. You can always do that later. In our case, if we want to move this around the screen, I'm not accidentally moving just a section of it. So in your handouts, it says that it wants you to go ahead and do some multi-line text. So let's go ahead and get our text baseline. It says to change our font to Hobo New. And make it 0.45. And it also says that we want to left justify our text. So I can select all that in advance, left click and let go, hold our shift key, left click, hit the enter key. Now in order to do multiple lines, you're going to type in your first line of text, hit the enter key, I can go over here and pick my color. Yeah, I didn't get that 45, so let's make that 0.45. It helps to get rid of the 1. You're correct. So I can change that. I can add my spacing. I can move this around. So again, you can do all of these things. Now, if I click off of it, the size that you see up here is the actual size of my design as a whole. So if you wanted to come in here and change the text width, again, the text width will actually allow you to change the individual widths of the letters without necessarily using the shrink to fit or the fill box. Again, it's another option. So let's say I make this 85. So each letter is 15% narrower. Again, just another way to do it. So now if I look at the top with that unclicked, this is the overall size of my design. Right, if you hit 1 on your keyboard for 1-to-1, that's going to put it actual size. Now, if you want to go ahead right now and view this in a hoop. Right now, to view in a hoop, you actually have to move the design to sit at 0, 0 on your screen. So I can click and drag and put a box around the design as a whole. I can pick it up and move it. So see, there's 0 here, and there's 0 over here. So once I've actually put the design sitting at 0, 0, when I go to hoop and load, now I can come in here, and again, your starter kit has the Tajima green hoops. They have that big long Hirsch part number. So my left chest hoop that I usually use is that TFA 15. So you can see I've got at least 1/2 inch all the way around my design, so I know it's going to fit. Now, if I want to actually view this on a garment, again, I can go over here to view at the top. I can go to 3D view up here. So it brings it up on fabric first. So you can see at the bottom left, the fabric is checked. I can click on garment, and then I can click where it says the apron, and I can scroll through and pick from the drop-down menu. Here's my little green t-shirt. So that's what it's going to look like on my t-shirt. And you can see that you can actually export this So you can save the JPEG file so that you can send that image with the design to your customer. Again, I can just close that view again. So if I'm ready to go ahead and save this, I want to make sure I go to File, Save As. I'm going to call it Zoo. If I'm ready to actually stitch this out, then I can save my DST file. So I can go File, Save As. I can change my files of type to either my DST, my TBF. I can tell it it's going to go on my flash drive. Hit save, and that would be ready to sew. Now, because this is a multi-line text segment, you're probably noticing over here that it's not in that properties section. So if you needed to change anything about what it says here, you would actually have to right-click and go to Modify Text. Modify Text is actually always here, but because it comes up on that side flyout, most people don't want to have to right-click to get here. But you can definitely right-click at any point with text on your screen, go to Modify Text and change what it says. In our case with multi-line, that's our only option. Now, as far as the distance between lines, that's called line spacing, and it's only available if you have this text as one unit. So if you put up individual lines of text, then you will not have line spacing. But if you left it as one piece like I did, then you'll have line spacing. So if you want these to be closer, you can put in a smaller amount. And see how it just made those lines closer together? As far as your group tab, so when we went up here, it's under segment, and then in this case, it's already group, but group and ungroup are under segment. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions on this one? All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to our next homework assignment. Our next homework assignment is going to be for a cap. So we can come in here and go to New File. Again, we can go to our wizard. Now remember, when you are selecting from a recipe, that recipe is strictly going to be properties that affect the fabric. Density, pull compensations, underlays. So we are going to bring in our design. So we're going to come here to Merge Design. Again, wherever you have saved your bat and ball design, that is in your materials section. Mine happens to be over here. So here's the bat and ball design. We're going to click on Open. Left click to place it. Again, it brings the actual colors that were saved with the design. So if we want to add a color for our text, we can do that. So we can come over here to Thread Chart. We can select any color that we want. It's going to ask if we want to add it. We can say yes, and it adds that as an option. Now you can see up here that the height of my design is 3.02. I don't know about you, but the hats I have in my office are not going to hold a design with lettering that already is at 3.02. So I'm going to have to make this smaller. Now for your homework designs, like we said, we gave you PXF files. So when you make them smaller, the stitch count will also change. So I can select this. I can go here and type in the height I want it to be. So I want this to be 1.75. Hit my enter key. Hit G for generate. So it has also changed the stitch count of this design. Okay. Great. If you put a box around this, this is showing you the size of what's in the box. Again, at the bottom, it's showing you the stitch count as well as the size of what's in the box. Now to group this, so again, remember, this isn't grouped yet. If I want to group this, put a box around it, segment, and group. So now if I pick this up and move it around on my screen, it's not going to break that apart. Right, when you pick something up and you move it on your screen, it does give you the extended crosshairs. So yes, that is great when you're moving things around. So if you want to automatically, if you know we're going to put this in a hoop, you can automatically bring that to 0 if you want. That's, again, personal preference there. So you can use those extended crosshairs to line it up. Let it go, hit 1 to 1 on your keyboard, and that's ready to go. So if we're going to put some lettering over here, we want it to be arc, so we're going to select our arc baseline. We can select our color. Now because the arc baseline is a box baseline, we can pick the font, but we're going to have to draw the height. So we're going to left click and let go, draw our line, left click and let go, pull up to get the radius. Again, left click, pull up to get the height, and then you can type. Ready with me? Now, if you want to be able to adjust your arc, make sure your beads are on. If your beads are on, you'll be able to pull this out and make it a little flatter if you choose to. So right now I've got 2.24 for the overall height of my design, so that's great. The only extra thing that we need to change on this, because it's going on a hat, is our lettering needs to sew from the center out. So I can come over here in my properties, and where it says sew sequence, the default is left. So I can hit center. So if I come over here to my sew clock and I watch this, you're going to see how it's starting to sew? It's going from the center out. So that way you're not pushing a big wrinkle into the middle of your hat. So it's going to push to the one side, come back, push to the other side. Now if you want to see this in your hat hoop, because we already brought that to 0, I can come up here to my hoop and load. I'm going to go to cap, and I have that front wide cap. So I must not be at 0 over here. So let's go ahead, bring this down to 0. So it's real easy to zero that out. Just go ahead and use those big crosshairs. And you don't have to have them on all the time. They come up automatically when you are moving something on your screen. So we know it fits in our hoop. We can come up to our view over here. We can go to 3D view. I can change this to garment. Here's my cap. So I can see what it looks like on my cap. Good, if I'm ready to save this, I'm going to go to File, Save As. Again, I make sure that I save that PXF file. If I'm ready to sew it, I can save it again. Change my files of type. Select my flash drive and hit save. Yes, you could have resized the giraffe. You can definitely go ahead and do that. Both designs that we gave you are PXF files, so when you resize them, the stitch counts will also change. As far as the start and stop point, yes, the default start and stop point for every design that's created is dead center of the design as a whole. So that's where you're seeing that traffic light here. So yes, that is dead center of the design as a whole. So that's the default. Right. If the overall design size is changed, everything changes. So yes, this whole thing is a PXF file and the whole thing is changeable. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go and close these. As far as, yes, if you're using stock designs and you merge something in, then yes, the stock designs are going to center as a whole with any text or anything else that you put in there. If you have your show commands on, with your show commands on, it's going to put a traffic light where the center of the design as a whole is. When you are resizing a PXF file, the software is automatically changing the stitch count proportionally. So no, you're not necessarily doing that by hand. It's going to change proportionally. As far as that garment view, if I want to see this on a garment, I can go to View, 3D View. I'm going to go to Garment over here. And then I'm going to go in and select this. So I want a sweatshirt front. So once I have that, I can move this. So here's my sweatshirt front. There is in your handouts an instructions on adding your own garment. So yes, that's in your handouts. As far as your print preview goes, here's your print preview under File. Again, I have this at full size, so it is actually going to have multiple pages to do this. But if I went under Settings and I say Fit to Page, then again, it's going to force it to fit to that page. I probably should bring that up again once I change that. So let's go over here to print preview. There we go. So there's the color changes here. As far as can you print the preview on a garment, you can save a JPEG. So it's saving a JPEG, then you can go ahead and print the JPEG, but you're not going to print it directly from Pulse. You'd have to actually open the JPEG in your computer and print from whatever program you're opening up JPEGs with. As far as adding the colors, if you needed to add a color to your palette, again, you're going to come over here to your thread chart, pick a color. It's going to ask to add it. Or, like I said, if you wanted to change a color, you can right-click, go to thread change, and then you can either type it if you knew what it was, or you could come in and select it from the drop-down. So the next thing that we want to work on is templates. So with a template, again, it's nothing that you literally have to specifically say you're going to create. Anything that you create and save with text as a PXF file can be used as a template. So as far as what a template's going to do, it's going to allow you to quickly change the lettering. So if I come over here and say new file and I go to templates, let's go get that Little League design that I just saved. So it's asking me how many files I want to create with the same setup. So let's say it's 3. I'm going to click on OK. It's going to bring up three actual pieces here. So that's going to be 3 separate designs. I could import the text from an Excel spreadsheet if I had it typed out that way, or I can go in and just start retyping. So whatever you want it to say, you can go ahead and type that in. Oops, let's go in and... Now I can hit generate now just to see one of those. I can hit generate now to generate all of these. It's going to generate all of my files that I just told it to create. These are still PXF files. So if I wanted to change spacing, I want to change anything about this, I can still do that. So you can see in here, here's the first one. Here's the second one. So again, let's say if I'm looking at this, this is really wide. I can still come in here. I can change my text width because I really don't know what size line I drew over here. So let's say I come in here and make this 85%. So that's all still changeable. With these, at that point, you're ready to go sew them. So it's just taking whatever you created and allowing you to quickly replace the text. I didn't have to draw the arc again. I didn't have to do any of that. So with a template, it's allowing you to take any design saved as a PXF file and use it as a template. Does anyone have any questions on that? Right, you could save So yes, if you were doing like Lakewood Rangers or whatever, it doesn't really matter. That's why I put Little League, because it's generic. That could be for any Little League team. And yes, if I put a second line of text underneath that had the kid's name or the kid's number, whatever it was, anything that's text is changeable. So that's why I would save a generic setup. And then for Lakewood Rangers, I might go ahead and save another one just for Lakewood Rangers, or I wouldn't have to. I guess it depends on how many you think that you're going to do with that same setup. So if you thought you were going to do a lot with Lakewood Rangers, I might save a Lakewood Rangers template and then just change the kid's name or change whatever it says. So you can make that as generic or non-generic as you want. And you can save as many of these as you want as PXF files. Again, in my case, I just used a very generic one so that I could just put a different team name. Does anyone have any other questions on templates? Because we've got one last new topic. We're actually doing great on time, even with all the questions. Again, those of you putting up questions, thank you so much. It definitely helps you as well as other people when you ask questions. Let's go to any other, let's see. I don't see. Again, like we said, it's already automatically centering. So it's nothing you turned on, it's a default. So the default for your software is to automatically center the design as a whole. As far as how did we start the template? Absolutely. Let's go ahead and close these. Close this down. So I went over here to my start page. I went to a new file and I selected templates from the special projects. I went in and selected my Little League design. And it asked me how many files I want to make. Maybe I only want to make 2. You can put in whatever number you want. Then you can come in here and highlight this and change it. If you knew how to spell, that'd be good. There we go. Now, if you do update preview, that's going to show you this in the box first. Then when you go to generate, it actually generates the files. No. Merge is actually bringing a design from wherever you stored it. So it has to be stored first in order to use merge. Copy and paste doesn't necessarily need to be stored first. You could have another design open and copy and paste to an open window. But with copy and paste, you have to have something else open in order to copy the design to paste it. So sometimes that's an extra step. As far as this, yes, this could be a DST file for the bat and ball. Just remember, if you use a DST file, though, and you resize it, the stitch count doesn't change. So you'd have to make sure that if you used a DST file, that it was the correct size. Right. In this case, if you had 10 different players, then yes, you would have 10 different files doing it with template. No, there is not an automatic way to move something to 0, 0. And actually, the software itself doesn't care if you're at 0, 0. The only time you have to be at 0, 0 is if you're going to put a hoop around it and view it that way. I mean, if this design is way over here, So this is not at 0, 0 right now, but the center of the design is still dead center of the design as a whole. So, I mean, no, the system doesn't care, really, if this is at 0, 0, except when you view it with a hoop. So there's no way to move it directly to 0, 0, and like I said, in most cases, it doesn't matter. So right now it is already trimming. So yes, it's already doing that. So these dotted lines are not sewing. So it's already trimmed those areas. If you wanted it to trim more, yes, you could come in if you want it to trim more. So right now the trim threshold is 0.12. So you could change the trim threshold to be smaller. So let's say you went 0.09. So that, again, is going to put in a little bit more trims. If you literally wanted it to trim everywhere, you could change that from trim to always trim. Again, realize when you make it trim all the time like this, though, it's going to make your design sew longer. So no, the dotted lines don't matter because they're not going to sew. So it's already trimming there. Does anyone have any questions before we go to our next topic? So no, Tajimas really don't care. It's only like literally, it's automatically centering the design. So it doesn't care. 0, 0 means nothing other than for the hoop. All right, so we are going to do our name stacking next. And again, for those of you who are new, you are not required to do name stacking. It's just something that we can make the software do. So if you wanted to sew a group of names, you could stack the names on top of each other and actually force them to go all at once to your machine as one piece instead of Jamie being a file and Zach being a file. You could send them over as one unit. So when you're going to stack your names, you would start it just the same way that you would start any other file that you were going to do one name. So I'm going to go to my wizard. Let's say I'm sewing on a PK shirt. I can select that recipe. I'm going to go to my text baseline. I'm going to change my font. So let's say I'm doing brush script new at 0.75. I'm going to left click to start this, draw my line, left click at the end of my line, hit enter, and I'm going to put a name on each line. So I'm going to put a name, hit the enter key, hit the enter key, so however many names you have in your list, you're going to type them. You're going to click on OK. And it is literally going to bring these up as one big list first. This is a great way for you to view it and verify whether you spelled everything correctly. Again, if you want to force this, just in case the name that you type was going to exceed the line that you drew, again, you can still put shrink to fit on here. That's still an option. In our case, it hasn't exceeded that 4-inch line that I drew, so it doesn't really matter. So if you needed to change anything, you would go ahead and do that before you stack it. So to stack it, we are changing our line spacing to minus 100. That's what's going to force it to stack. So you can see that right now, all those names are stacked on top of each other. Now, the next thing that you would need to do is you are going to need to tell it to stop between the lines. So you're going to insert a stop between the lines. So you can just put a check mark there. It literally puts a stop sign. So see the stop signs that it's putting in here? So if you were to go in and look at your print preview, you can see there is a stop sign between each name. Don't worry, that is to the right-hand side of the box. That doesn't mean that there is not a stop sign between Jamie and Chuck. There is. Again, it stops in between each of them. It just so happens that that particular part of the printout puts it to the right-hand side of the icon. So I know that confuses a lot of people. But again, it is definitely putting a stop between each of these, not at the very end over here. So by putting a stop in between these and it goes to your Tajima machine, you're going to tell your Tajima machine to stop between color changes. So once you've told it to stop between color changes, then once you start to sew, so again, you would load your design. You can only trace it the one time because remember, this is one file. So as long as your longest name fits, which in this case it's going to, you're going to hit start and it's going to sew the first one and then it's going to stop because again, in your machine control panel, you're going to tell it to stop between color changes. So it's going to stop. You're going to put the next garment on. You're going to hit start. It's going to sew Chuck after that. Then it's going to stop. And it's going to do that each time until you run out of names. So the key to this is the negative 100% for your line spacing and the insert stop between lines so that it puts those stop codes in between each line of text. Then on your machine itself, and again, please verify in your machine manual how to do that. There are so many model machines out there. Again, please, in your manual, you want to go and look up stop between color changes so that you are programming your machine correctly. It is actually because you are going ahead and stopping, it is going to put the trim there so you don't have to worry about the trim. As far as is there a limit? No, there is not a limit for the names. Because you're not really changing colors, even if you exceed the 100. So your control panel on your Tajimas can sew 99 color changes. If you exceed that, it really doesn't matter because it would just go back to 1. So in this case, you're only sewing one color anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So no, there really wouldn't be. I will say, though, I don't tend to put 100 names in there. When I stack, I would probably stack by size just so that you don't get confused. So I would make a file for all the small shirts, a file for all the large shirts. So that way, when you're pulling a shirt and you're hooping it and you're putting it on your machine, it doesn't matter which one of those names it is. You don't want to have to worry about, okay, Jamie needs to go on this size and Chuck needs to go on that size. I want to pull an entire batch and sew all the names that go on that size, all the names that go on that size. It gives you a lot more control. As far as on your screen, it depends on the screen that you have. That color on your regular M-Series machines, it's going to be gray. So it will show you on your control panel what name you're on. Again, when you have so many stacked on top of each other, I kind of use my printout. So I come over here with that print preview and I print it out and I use that to check off the names. So I know what order they're going in. But yes, even your control panel would show you the name in gray that you're sewing or that have been sewn. The names are going to gray out as they sew and the color would show up. Let's see. As far as combining art with a stack name, you're not really, because you're not stacking the art. So again, it depends on the machine that you have. Some people with multi-head machines, they would go ahead, let's say you have a 4-head machine, they would sew out the design all at once on all 4 heads, and then they would stack 4 names. On a single head, it's not going to help you at all. On a single head, because you can't unhoop them, so unless you had tons of hoops, using the names stacked in that case with a design isn't really going to help you. As far as the stop code, again, it's over here in your properties. It's stop between lines. Let's see, going back here. As far as our trims over here, so let me just close this preview. So our trims over here, it is actually trimming what's called a trim threshold of 0.12. So if the distance is at least 0.12 inches, it's going to put a trim between letters. Again, if you say always trim, it would trim between every letter. Or you could just change the trim threshold. Does anyone have any other questions? Does anyone have any other questions? Again, if you don't have questions, you are free to log off. Again, for anyone who wants to join us on Thursday for our editing class, please make sure to sign up by the end of the day tomorrow. Again, please give yourself that 24 hours. The classes have been filling up very quickly, so don't wait till the last minute to sign up or you will get closed out. So again, make sure that you are signing up in advance. True patches are actually, they have a special machine that puts that border on there. So a true patch would actually be cut out and then they marrow an edge on it. If you want to go ahead and put a border around something, you have that symbols font that you could put a border around something. Here, let's just start a file. So if I go ahead and put a letter here, and then I want to go ahead and put a border, I can go back here. I can change my font. So again, over here, like we said, there's a borders font. So you can draw your line. I guess it helps to look what that would be. Capital R. Capital R. Yeah, that's the error message you get. So then you'd have to tell it what size it is. So, I mean, again, you could cut that out if you chose to. But again, it's not going to be a true patch. If you're over here under your stack names, you can right click, go to modify text, and then you could go through and find whatever was spelled wrong and change it. You could stack on a 6 head. It's just you have to keep turning the heads off. So, I mean, you're just doing names, you'd have to turn off 5 heads and just sew on 1. Most people are going to do it on a single head, or like I said, you'd be shutting down your 6 head. You shut off 5 heads to do names. Again, as far as the dot between the base of the eye and the regular dot, that's something we're going to cover in editing because it's a little bit more detailed. Like I said, as far as doing stacking with a logo, if you're doing it on a single head, like I said, you can't unhoop anything, so you could sew a bunch of them, the same logo on there. But again, you're going to be limited in the hoop that you have. So if you have 4 hoops, the only thing you could do is sew the logo 4 times, and then you could stack 4 names. So like I said, I don't know with something like that if it's going to pay to stack the names. You would probably just use templates and have each individual one loaded. If you have a multi-head, like I said, if you have a 6 head, you could sew that out 6 times, shut off 5 heads, and start the stacked names, and you would stack 6 at a time. Your trim threshold is over here under your properties. So underneath connections, you have trim and then trim threshold. Again, does anyone else have any questions? Again, it starts off as 0.12. If you wanted to trim more, you're going to put a smaller number. So you can put in 0.09, 0.06. Again, make sure you are downloading the materials so that you can get the information for your homework. So again, we are going to end our class. I do thank everyone for attending, and I hope we see you on another webinar soon. Again, thank you very much.